Yeah, thank you everyone for taking the time to come today. This is purposely a smaller group so that it can be very collaborative. So we ask that basically if you've got a question, just unmute and ask it like it's meant to be like that. Or if you don't want to unmute and ask it, then feel free to post it in the chat. That's also fine. But this presentation is all about a conversation. We're not here just to talk at you. So please do. It's always a much better session when people ask tons of questions and people talk about their challenges. And so, yeah, please do just pipe up as and when all the way through. We're not going to go around and introduce everyone because there's 20 people. That will take 20 minutes. So yeah, just thank you all for taking the time to come today. We appreciate it. Just in terms of introductions, if you don't know me, I'm Daniel Teacher. I run TTech, and I'm joined by Colin and Dan. I'll allow them to introduce themselves. If you guys want to quickly go. Colin, do you want to go first?
You first, Colin.
No, I was being polite. Colin Truesdale. I'm Director of Solutions Consulting at Intapp, with particular focus on the Microsoft 365 world. So previously from a company called Repstore, which some of you may have heard of, which joined the Intapp family pretty much 2 years ago now. Yeah.
And my name is Dan Dronsfield. I think a lot of folks on the call know me already, but I spend my whole time just talking to accountants and figuring out how to resolve the issues.
Cool. Yeah, thank you, guys. Yeah, so today we've got so the plan is we've got a mixture of slides that we're going to go through. So we're going to just talk about where we're at in terms of the market. We're going to give a bit of an update from Microsoft. I have some news like hot off the press as of like 2 hours ago from Microsoft, which is always handy for everyone. So yeah, and then Colin's going to spend some time just showing you. We're not going to do an actual demo because, again, we just don't have time to get into all the detail, but we're going to do it via slideware. So we're going to show you how different things work. Again, I encourage people to ask as many questions as they would like. Again, that's a big part of how this works. And then we'll talk about various integrations and pros and cons and next steps. So that's what the plan is. But like I said, yeah, this is very much your session, so please shout. Is there anything burning that anyone wants to make 100% sure that, like, you know, please, by the end of this session, make sure you've spoken about A, B, and C that anyone wants to raise now that I can make sure that we'll cover?
Copilot, is that in scope?
That is my new update and video that is coming. So yes,
it might be.
Yes. It's good. There's good and bad news on that one. Cool. Anything else from anyone else?
The cost is the bad news, I'll take it.
And there's also an enterprise agreement minimum, but we'll come on to that in a minute.
Yeah.
Anything else that's burning that people want to make sure, outside of obviously the obvious about Intapp and stuff like that? But okay, we will start. Okay, so the reason we're here today really is I actually wrote these 2 slides quite a few years ago, but all of this is still entirely true. So, you know, many practices still don't have this concept of what I would call the single source of truth when it comes to documents. So many firms that we meet have a shared drive, have OneDrive, have bits of SharePoint, have stuff on people's desktops, stuff in your document management system. And if you were to actually have to, if the client were to say, oh, please can I have a copy of everything? It becomes quite a big exercise to go around people's inboxes. You know, I've seen partners I've worked with, they're like, oh yeah, we've got a document management system, but in my Outlook, I have all these client folders that are mine. And I'm like, but what happens if someone else needs those things? And so, you know, we often end up with lots of data in lots of different places. And so it means everything from compliance and GDPR to searching for stuff to just what do you do when someone's on holiday just becomes a really challenging task. And so I don't know if you guys, anyone on the call, agrees with what I've said or they have the same challenge, but it's certainly what we see everywhere, where this concept of having it all in one place is something that is a big challenge. I'll carry through. Yeah, so, you know, this slide was taken from a real practice that we work with, where basically they had 8 different places, and I'm sure there was more, but that was the ones that we came up with in the first instance. So they had Virtual Cabinet and Outlook and SharePoint and Shared Drive and a random cool tool called MSAV and Dropbox and servers that were on-prem as well, and all of which their data was living in all of these different places. And so, you know, for us, it's really about bringing it all together. And so some of you have probably seen this slide before, but we continually use it because someone just saw about letting someone in. We continually use it because it still is entirely true. So, you know, in order to be able to take advantage of all of these technologies, you know, having the right foundations in place is really, really important. Use of cloud is really important. And I think just to touch on what James was saying, and I'll come on to this in a second, where I guess Intapp and all of this stuff really starts to come into their own is over here. So having cloud document management is really important for all of the benefits I spoke about earlier. But what is now changing, and I have a video that I'll show in a couple of minutes, is that if you want to use ChatGPT and Copilot and Autopilot and all of this stuff that is coming, if your data is not in SharePoint in 365, you won't be able to get the benefit of this stuff. And so everyone is really enthusiastic about all of this. But what's going to happen is they're going to say, oh, brilliant, I'm now going to do Bing Enterprise. And you're going to say, you know, go and find me a document of A, B, and C. And Bing Enterprise doesn't see your desktop and doesn't see your Outlook and doesn't see your shared drive. It doesn't know, it has no connectivity to them. And if you think about how ChatGPT works, is effectively the internet is an open library of information, yeah, and ChatGPT is able just to go there and crawl every website because every website is public by default. But that starts to change when you want to then put that onto your own business. And so again, having it all living within SharePoint, which is where we're kind of going to go with all of this, becomes absolutely critical to be able to take advantage of it. And that's both for automation from Copilot and those bits and pieces, but also for the generation of it. Yeah, so you have to be able to search them and generate them and store them and collaborate. And Microsoft's entire strategy is now around it being an M365. Like that is a complete prerequisite. They will absolutely not build connectors to on-premise shared drives. That is not going to happen. And onto your personal Outlook, you know, they will in some senses, but not to the local area, only what's in 365. They will not search your desktop. That will never happen. Yeah. And so this whole concept of lots of people use 365 today, and I'm sure I'd be interested to know from everyone in the group if, you know, if I'm sure you're in a similar situation in terms of how much is in SharePoint and elsewhere, but that suddenly the value of that goes up infinitely if you want to take advantage of that. Is everyone else in this similar situation to what I talk about, or is everything perfect? Go on, Chris, you can jump in there.
I was going to say we're on the journey with you, Daniel, to get everything perfect. So we still have a few silos.
No pressure then, thanks. Yeah. So so in terms of moving it forward, again, lots of people have seen this slide before, but again, this is really, really important. And again, we're just banging the same drum here continuously. So when we work with accountancy firms, and James, I'm not sure if you've probably not seen this from us before, actually, but this is what we call, how do I take advantage of the SaaS apps while still living with the old school on-prem apps within accountancy? So our view of the world is everything that is an icon around the edge is a SaaS, cloud first, you know, modern way of doing stuff. And everything in the bottom box over here is I don't have a choice. I still have to continue working in that way. Yeah. So we talk about the use of Power BI. Today is all about Intapp, and that's all about leveraging SharePoint and Teams and your documents. Practice Gateway we will talk about a bit today, because that's about how the clients also engage with this. Yeah, that's a very important part of this. You know, it's one thing to have a great document management system yourself, but then if you just end up emailing them a copy every single time, you're missing a lot of the business process. You know, you just take the great example is always a share purchase agreement. Yeah, how many different versions? You know, if you go in your iManagers or your shared drives or your virtual cabinets, if you look at a share purchase agreement, I guarantee you there are 25 versions in every deal that you've done, if not more. And so again, if you can use the collaboration features within Office 365, you don't need to have 25 versions anymore. You can just have a link with the customer that just says, this is the persistent live version, and Office 365 will track all of that for you. So Practice Gateway is becoming very, very important into that. And then it's really, you know, everyone is now spending a lot of money on their M365 SKUs. I'll come on in a second, James, to that, going even higher now with Copilot. But so again, people want to maximize their investment here. Yeah, so we all spend a lot of money on that, and it's really about how do we leverage. And so this is, I guess, our version of the world of how you really maximize your investment within Microsoft without having to go and buy other tooling. Does that make sense to anyone? Is there any questions on that? Cool. Yeah, and then so from an Intapp perspective, Intapp is all about bringing documents and workflow from within SharePoint, Outlook, and Teams under one banner. And so, you know, I know lots of people are running slightly different versions of practice management, but that's not to be a problem. But really, and again, I'm not going to go and steal Colin's thunder, but Intapp, if you like, the context of where it lives within this conversation, yeah, is how do I manage my SharePoint, Outlook, and Teams infrastructure? So many firms today, again, feel free to shout out if you like, you know, have many, many different team sites. SharePoint is a bit of a free-for-all. I know for BHP, Andy, you've got it all nailed, so it's slightly different for you guys. But you know, it's about how do we create that connectivity between my practice management system. So when I create a client in the practice management system, how do I have my documents, which is effectively the currency in accountancy, accountants effectively trade in advice and documents, how do I bring those two together in a controlled manner? Yeah, and what we see in 365 today is lots of people using 365, but in a very unstructured, unconnected, disjointed fashion. And then again, you're not really maximizing your investment in it. And I think it becomes particularly prevalent where I've seen this work, where you have a new joiner. That's always the best test of it. If a new joiner walks into an organization and they're like, and you explain them to them, and they're like, oh yeah, I get it. Clients here, clients also in the document management system, there's a connection there, it's all automatic, they get it. And when you're having to say, oh, well, it's meant to be in the document management system, but actually, just so you're aware, yeah, everyone will need to be CC'd on emails because we're not very good at saving it. Or by the way, just so you know, some of the data is on the shared drive. Everyone's smiling as I'm saying this. Some of the data is you know, in someone's inbox. You know, you kind of, it takes away from making the new joiner experience optimal. And immediately you're kind of backpedaling on what the best practice is. Just very quickly to touch on it as well. So Practice Gateway, I do need to talk about that today. It is now becoming the front door to Intapp. So Intapp don't per se have a collaboration or a SharePoint portal themselves. And so Practice Gateway now has an API with Intapp that allows for that customer journey. And so from our perspective, what we're now doing with this, which is really quite exciting, is lots of you will recognize the icon that you see on the screen today, is between Intapp and Practice Gateway, we're bringing everything on the screen you see together. So suddenly when you have Practice Gateway and Intapp, it will talk to your practice management system. It will talk to digital or CCH, depending on what you're using for compliance. It will integrate with SharePoint. It will integrate with Smart Search and Inflow. And we're talking to lots of other vendors. And our ambition from a TTEC perspective is to play nicely with everybody. Accountancy has long been a world where vendors hug their customer and say, that's my customer. No, I'm not going to collaborate. No, we're not going to work together. Our mantra is the opposite. We want to work with everybody. So, you know, for example, Silverfin is going to be added to this list shortly, and a number of other AML tools is going to be added, and Adobe is on here as well. And so for us, you know, I'm sure many of you have this sprawl of your apps as well, and everyone wants to bring them closer together. And so when we work with clients, it's about using Intapp for the documents and then using Practice Gateway to be the glue between all these different things as well. And we won't get into all the reasons that we have. So to answer James's question from earlier, it was a perfect question, so thank you, James. So I will play the video. So Colin, just for your benefit, I'm going to play the video first, and then I'm going to give the update that I literally got 2 hours ago from Microsoft, which is very relevant. So I'm hoping my audio works. I did share that earlier. So if you don't hear the audio, someone just wave furiously, and hopefully this will all be good. So this is a video from Microsoft about SharePoint and Copilot, and this is actually a 10-minute video condensed into about 2 minutes, because you always see a 10-minute video.
You start by asking Copilot to analyze the data and give you 3 key trends. Within seconds, you've got what you need. But you want to drill in. You ask Copilot a follow-up question about one of the trends. Copilot creates a new sheet. This new sheet creates a sandbox to play in to better understand what's going on without modifying the data in the original sheet. This is a great example of how Copilot up-levels your skills, showing you how to break down the problem step by step. You ask Copilot to visualize what contributed to the decline in sales growth this period. Copilot adds a little color to make the problem jump off the page. Now, you want to dig deeper and ask a follow-up question. Copilot not only answers your question, it creates a simple model of the scenario. And it even asks you if you want to learn more about what it did with a step-by-step breakdown. Finally, you can ask it to create a graph of your projected model. Copilot turned a sea of data into clear insights and actions.
So hopefully that all came through in a non-jitter audio okay way. So there is a much longer version of this video that takes this and shows you the PowerPoint version of it and shows you lots of different versions of it. On the 18th of October, we have a much longer event at Microsoft where we're going to get right into the detail of all of it. But to give you the kind of hot off the press, and the key point on this is, if you want to use this stuff, which everybody does, your data has to be inside M365 and therefore SharePoint. And that is the critical point that people need to understand. So, and everyone is going to want to use that. There's going to be a huge amount of marketing from Microsoft and ourselves about this. There was an announcement yesterday or 2 days ago from Microsoft in New York. I'll talk about that in a second, but that is the critical point. You want to be able to take advantage of this, it's got to be in 365. So to answer James's question from earlier, so there's some good news and there's some bad news. So the good news is, if you are an enterprise customer, so that's an EA, and if you don't know what an EA is, then you're not an enterprise customer. So my guess is that is James plus Andy plus maybe 1 or 2 others. Have you guys got EAs? I'm assuming you do. No, you don't, Andy. Oh, okay. Separate discussion. So if you have an EA, they are in the first wave of customers on this. So that is launching officially from the 1st of November. However, there is a 300 user minimum commit, and you have to have E3 or E5 as well. So what that, and it costs $30, I believe, per user per month. So that's $9,000 a month minimum commit. Yeah, I hear a deep intake of breath from everybody. So that is not the SMB, which is what most, as I said, that is not designed for the smaller customer at this point. Yeah, so that is what is happening now and is from the 1st of November. There is no announcement yet, this is the other side of the coin, for smaller organizations who don't have enterprise agreements. I will pretty much guarantee you that you'll have to have small business premium. That I already do know. But I don't know, because it's not been announced yet, what is going to happen for non-enterprise agreement customers. That I imagine there will be a second wave early next year that starts to work on this. So I appreciate that's good news and that's bad news, but that's the news nonetheless. So you probably have questions. I found this out 2 hours ago, so I don't have lots of answers. I refer you. So on the 18th, we are going to be at Microsoft in Paddington with Microsoft in the room as well. So I would strongly encourage everyone to try and attend that as well. And then we will get much more into the detail of that in October. But that is the kind of short version. So hopefully, James, that gives you an answer for now. It's the best news for you, I guess, apart from the price. But hopefully the value that it brings is significant. So I'm happy to take a short question, but just bear with me that obviously I know almost as much as I've told you at this point.
I mean, I think the difficulty is we'd really want to trial it before we committed to that spend, but I'm assuming they're not going to entertain that
So the strategy that Microsoft are taking at the moment is there is so much demand, they don't need to do that. So if I kind of give you the roadmap that's happened so far, so what's basically happened is this whole ChatGPT, OpenAI, Microsoft thing started with 300 enterprise customers, like, Deutsche Bank and, the American government, like enormous Microsoft customers. And they picked 300 companies globally, and it was $1 million to play. Okay, so that was the first tranche of people, and they were hugely oversubscribed. So they're kind of now on the next tranche, if you like. So they're using the price point to kind of gauge levels of interest and commitment from the customer. And so I imagine, so obviously we've come down significantly from, $1 million to at least, 9,000 a month is a pretty big jump already. So you just need to bear with it while it goes through that cycle. But the demand is effectively controlling the supply at this point. So yeah, any other questions on that? Fine. I'm going to stop sharing. And Colin is going to take over from this point.
Sure. Can you all see my screen?
Yeah.
Yeah. Same rules apply. In fact, it's not even a rule. Don't stand on ceremony. Fire away with questions, comments as and when they come up. Feel free to unmute your mic, pop it in the chat. Somebody will tell me. For me, I've been working closely with some of the people who are leading the AI piece within the UK in Microsoft. And this is as big a killer app as I have seen in 25 years of working in content and document management. This, if I was a non-Microsoft document management provider, won't name any names, but if my company began with an I, for example, I would be concerned about this, because as Daniel says, if you ain't on 365, if you're not storing your content within SharePoint, you are going to be missing out on all, if not all, a significant amount of all of this new functionality. So it really is going to change, I think, the market quite considerably. Now, they may screw it up with pricing and all the rest of it. Time will tell, but I think we'll know pretty quickly. So, Copilot is a great example of where the information worker, to use the terms, world is going to change in the next few years. But it is a bit of a nirvana state. As somebody said there, can we trial it first? And I think that's not a big ask. Actually, it's not an unsensible ask. It is going to take some time to get to that place where we're just completely interacting with Copilot's doing half our job for us, and we're so much more productive. One of the stepping stones on getting to that nirvana-like state is, and has been termed, the modern work strategy. So what do I mean by modern work, if you haven't heard that term before? So on the left-hand side here is a typical representation of a professional services firm's information systems and architecture. So it's usually a collection of different specialist discrete systems that are being stitched together to make it all work. Some of them will be on-prem, some of them will be in the cloud. From a user's perspective, it's all very disconnected as well. So people are disconnected from each other. They've got multiple systems that they're having to dip in and out of. It's not really supporting innovation. You're not really realizing value from your information. And it's all a bit of an overhead in terms of the maintenance and management of it. So one of the first steps here that Microsoft has been talking about for a few years now, that has really started to gain traction in recent times, is the concept of the team as the central hub for work. Having an engagement team, which is a one-stop shop for all of the information that I need. And this will pull in threads of information like items from 365, like your PMS information, your CRM, your practice gateway information, information from other systems within Intapp. And what that does then is it brings the users together. So it gives them a central one-stop shop that users can then interact with all of these applications. They can interact with each other as well through a common platform, a common place in the form of the engagement team. And this is solving then a lot of these problems in terms of it's difficult to collaborate, everything's disjointed, you're constantly switching between applications. Provide a one-stop shop, pulls all the threads of information together into one place, giving you access to all of that information, and also then collaboration with each other within the firm, but also outside the firm as well with your clients. So the main drivers that we see behind modern work falls into three categories: the challenges, the actual demand, and what are also the catalysts behind this. And in terms of the drivers and the challenges for this at present, the first one is the sheer amount of noise for an information worker. It's getting more and more noisier. There's more apps that I need to be working with. There are more notifications that are coming out. I'm constantly having to context switch. So some interesting stats I found is that you're suffering an interruption every 3 minutes. And, especially if you've got your email notifications turned on, which is just a disaster. You're just constantly getting emails in, constantly being distracted. You've got 8 windows at a minimum open on your computer. You're checking email 30 times an hour is an interesting stat, because again, you're getting those notifications. How are you supposed to concentrate with all of that noise going on? And then one that was a real eye-opener for me, in the last 2 years alone, 90% of the world's data has been generated. The sheer amount of data that's being collected and analyzed is growing exponentially. And as we introduce the likes of Copilot, GPT into that mix, that's only going to increase further. But we need to then, as professional services firms, look at ways to capitalize on that information and to really not only manage that mountain of information, but to actually gain value from it. There's also significant demand from all sides for a better way of working. Firstly, from your clients. So your clients are expecting you to be able to interact with them in pretty much near real time. They're already, a lot of them, using Microsoft Teams. So if you're dealing with corporate organizations, they're already using Microsoft Teams. They expect you to be using that as well and to be able to communicate with them. So they want dynamic, flexible ways of working. The workforce itself, as I get older and the workforce gets younger, the people that are coming into the workforce, the millennials, the Gen Zers that are coming in, over half of the workforce now has been used, especially through their further education years, with a tool set that is highly collaborative. Everybody's sitting in a lecture, working collaboratively on the same OneNote or the same Google Doc with their notes, being able to ping each other in real time. This is what they're used to. This is what they expect when they come into the workplace. Firms that are offering that will then be more attractive and will retain those people. So if they come into a firm that's still extremely disjointed, that everything feels hard to do, they're not going to stick around. And then obviously, it goes without saying, remote work. Yes, there's return to office mandates, and we're all hearing that messaging from firms. but hybrid working is here to stay. I know of very few people that plan to go back to an office 5 days a week. I was having exactly the same conversation with Sarah just before everybody jumped on about the fact that I'm 15 miles from my office, but it took me an hour and a half yesterday to get door to door. I ain't doing that very often. So, you know, hybrid work's here to stay. We've got to have the tool set that supports that. And then there are some actual significant catalysts for firms to capitalize on this. The first one is cloud computing. There is nobody out there that is out investing and out innovating Microsoft with their Microsoft 365 platform from a communication and information management perspective. Digital transformation, I always say with a wry smile, because I've been working in digital transformation for 25 years. And when's the transformation going to happen? I think everybody thinks it's a one-time thing that's done and then you move on, whereas it is a process. But the opportunities now with how we consume and how we create information powered by AI and automation at the bottom are significant. There have been studies that say it could add up to $100 trillion to the global economy in the next couple of years. So there's going to be a significant and seismic change there. So there's a huge amount of opportunity to make your processes better, to make the work experience for your workers easier and more effective, to essentially get more from less. So there's a lot of opportunity. There's a lot of demand from all sides, and the current way of working is not sustainable. And those that sit on existing solutions and existing ways of work, quite frankly, are going to get left behind. And Microsoft know this. This is why they're charging what they're going to be charging and not doing trial periods. They know that you're either on the bus or under the bus when it comes to this change in how you're working. Any questions, queries, comments, thoughts on any of that so far? Gives me a chance to grab some water. So we believe in Intapp, and certainly aligned to Microsoft's view of the world, that Microsoft Teams is a key enabler for this to happen. And that's going to take a step further then with the introduction of Copilot. But having talked to our clients, we know that there are some pretty big challenges with Microsoft Teams out of the box. You've got to remember that Teams is a horizontal platform. It is not built for an accountancy firm specifically, or a law firm, or an XYZ firm. Like all Microsoft tools, it is a horizontal tool set. And so that does bring some challenges. The challenges can be categorized actually in two types: IT and governance challenges and adoption challenges. The first one is one that I saw in a previous company that I worked for, we were really good at document management. Everything had a well-defined home. We were an IT firm that had early access to Teams. We didn't put enough control around the governance and the process of creating a team. Suddenly everybody had a shiny new toy to play with. Oh, that was a great session from Daniel and Colin. Let's make a team for that, and let's pick those PowerPoint slides into that team. And suddenly everybody was playing, well, what team did that slide deck go into? And you were constantly scrolling and trying to find your information. And we weren't retiring teams, so teams were just lying there going dusty, but we weren't sure whether we could get rid of them. So you've got to have good control over the process of requesting and creating teams. Otherwise, you lose control very quickly and you end up with sprawl. A lot of the firms that I talk to are concerned about the shadow DMS aspect of Teams. Teams is really easy to drag and drop a document into, to create a new document in the Files tab, etc. But if I'm already running a traditional document management system, well, is that going to get left behind as people then move to the path of least resistance in Teams? Am I going to end up with a shadow document management system? Is this going to become another data silo that isn't connected with anything else? And then there is a risk and management overhead. So out of the box, there's very little automation within Teams for its life cycle. And that means then that you have to have specialist resources who know what they're doing. You have to have them trained, and that poses a risk around misconfiguration of teams, accidentally oversharing or not locking teams down enough. So it does present some security risks, and it is then taking resource to keep that up and running. And then the other challenge that we see is simply usability and adoption. As I said, Teams, horizontal product, it is out of the box, not designed for the needs of a professional services person, somebody who's running an audit, somebody who's running a tax engagement. And to configure a team to be useful for Contoso's audit in 24 takes a certain amount of know-how and time and effort. So it's not going to be done consistently on every team. Therefore, the quality is always going to vary. Sometimes it'll just be an absolutely standard basic team that's used, and that's going to then have a lower value because it's just used as somewhere to dump documents and to chat about them. And so without good governance, without good teams that are being created that have value, user adoption of Teams beyond just Skype-esque features of calls and chat can be quite low at times. And I don't know how you're all using Teams. I talk to firms and they fall into two camps. The purple Skypers, people that are firms that are using Teams just as chat and call, nothing more than Skype with a different coat of paint on it. Or the Wild Westers who haven't put control over the creation of the teams, and they've then ended up with a huge amount of sprawl. So I would guess that most of you will fall into one of those two. So obviously, otherwise I wouldn't be here today. Intapp has then a rich feature set to help with that. We call it Intapp Workspaces. And it's helping you with items like automated provisioning. So when a new engagement reaches a certain stage within your CRM, automatically create an engagement team for that engagement. And we have templating functionality so that because this is an audit engagement, it will then have the features in that team, the different reports, the different additional systems and apps stitched into that team consistently so that then it is a ready to work team. It's got everything I need at my fingertips. I'm good to go for this audit, and it's all automated. It's applying lifecycle governance. So the process of creating a team can be workflow controlled. We can also have a fixed period of time for that team, at which point we then get rid of it at the right point of time. So maybe when the engagement ends, we actually remove the team automatically from the system. So you're not left with a load of teams that are going crusty, that are, maybe posing risk of holding information for too long. And it's very much focused around the engagement. So it's a team for an audit, a team for a tax with everything I need for that engagement. It's leveraging the inbuilt document management of SharePoint. And SharePoint historically has suffered from the same thing of being that horizontal platform, not really tuned to the needs of somebody doing an audit. Again, our tool set is helping that to make that relevant for your individual workers. But again, back to what Daniel said earlier on, if you ain't playing with Microsoft, and if you're not putting your content into SharePoint, Copilot won't be able to then leverage that and to then make use of that. And so our tool set allows you to be integrated with 365 items like Purview for sensitivity labeling and retention. And we also have a product feature and functionality. It's called Intapp Walls. And walls is all around ethical walls. So if I'm working on the audit for Coke, I can't then work on the audit for Pepsi. I can't be added to the team for Pepsi's audit. So workspaces and walls work together to check and make sure that the right people are being added to the right team or can't be added to the teams because they have an ethical conflict. So this is all about taking that horizontal teams platform and making it super relevant to the needs of somebody running an audit or whatever the engagement type is, but also in a way that is secure and that is then fully controlled from a lifecycle perspective. Any questions, queries, or thoughts on that so far? And I'm going to jump into a very quick slideshow demo actually in a second.
Yeah, Colin,
Just
Colin, what we should do is, if we can try and finish like with 6 or 7 minutes to spare, then we'll open it up to questions.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
if they don't have questions, I'll just go to people individually. It'll be more fun that way.
You'll either provide questions or Daniel will force them out of you. Is basically the underlying threat I just heard there. Yeah, absolutely. I will finish on time. So this is part of a wider solution. So we have Intapp documents, all about making SharePoint really relevant and really useful in the context of the engagements that you're doing. And it leverages Microsoft Outlook actually as a primary interface for that, because we do recognize that a lot of people are working within the Outlook interface. And so that then drops the adoption barrier for us. It makes it easy, super easy to adopt SharePoint by actually putting it behind Outlook. And then because we're using SharePoint, you're getting to leverage the likes of syntax for document classification, information extraction from your documents, Viva topics to build rich knowledge bases from that information, and Copilot obviously going forward. Workspaces, which I'm spending more time talking about here, making sure that you are then meeting the needs of a modern workforce with collaboration, but doing that in a way that is a little bit more controlled to stop that risk of sprawl or security concerns. And then we also work with partners like TTEC with Practice Gateway to then bring this to your clients, but keeping all of that information within the 365 platform and leveraging a lot of the rich functionality behind 365 for co-authoring. So the ability to co-author, it was great pulling these slides together with TTEC today, actually, because they were able to just share them out to me like a client. I was able to jump on and we were all able to then co-author the document, the PowerPoint presentation. There's no game in town like Microsoft from a collaboration, internal and external, and knowledge value exploitation perspective. So enough slides. Let me quickly show you the product, which is in slides, but it's taken directly from my demo system. And please do fire away with questions as they come up. So here I'm in Teams. Teams, obviously, it is the place where I'll go to find my information and to work with my co-workers on my engagements. But here we introduce an app, which then structures the world in a little bit more of a familiar way for me. So I've got a section which would list all of my client teams. This section, and this is all configurable. I've got a section which is listing my engagement teams. I can see them split by, what type of engagement it is. I could also bring up advanced search, which would allow me to search on the client number, the client name, who's the key contact, all of that information that is flowing in from the practice management system, from the CRM. So it's a much more familiar experience already for finding teams for the end user. Today I'm working on Alpha Consultancy. So if I choose that, here we're taken into a team for this consultancy engagement. But back to that concept of templating, because this is a strategy consultancy engagement or an accountancy engagement, a tax engagement, whatever it is, the template will then do several things, including it will determine what should actually be included by default within the team. So as I said, it pulls together all of those threads of information in the appropriate shape of a team for that engagement type. So I can chat with people on my team. I can see the high-level details of this team from the Details tab, and any of the people. So this is all of the details that are flowing in from the CRM, but we can use that information to automatically secure the team. So if the CRM tells me that the project director is Larry, the technology team is Casey and Dash, we can use that then to automatically give those people membership or ownership of the team. So the security is applied automatically and consistently. If I try to add Alex on, the integration with Walls has kicked in and it's saying, nope, sorry, you can't add Alex. This is a Coke engagement. He works for Pepsi engagements. So it will actually stop me from adding Alex in on a security field on the team. And then we bring all of the information together, providing that one-stop shop, bringing all of those disparate silos of information into the team so that I'm spending less time clicking between applications, logging in, finding the same engagement in all of those applications constantly. So here, one of the systems, Deal Cloud, it could be Dynamics, it could be Salesforce, whatever your additional systems are, I'm bringing in Project Falcon, which is the code name for this particular engagement. So I'm bringing in the engagement information from those additional systems. And so this provides a really nice way of just giving a one-stop shop, everything at my fingertips for this engagement. Where we can take this further is to help you to sweat the asset that you're already paying for in the form of Planner as well. So because this is a strategy engagement, what Workspaces, again with templates, has done is it has created a full plan for this engagement with zero touch. So it's taken the people that have been fed in from the CRM or from your other systems. It has assigned them to these automatically created tasks, which have been put into the right buckets and given priorities and dates, etc. So we template drive the entire creation of the plan and keep that plan automatically updated as the engagement progresses through its life cycle. And so this is an area where I always ask my customers, what are you doing with Planner? And they go, not a lot. It's a faff to set up. We don't, it's too much work and we're doing it inconsistently. Here, zero touch. Create a template of the plan and we create the whole thing dynamically and automatically when we create the team.
Yeah, Colin, the accountancy parlance for this is workflow, which is traditionally done in many practices on a spreadsheet and numerous spreadsheets by manager. So yeah, this is something that is often very valuable.
And it's locked away. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Sorry, it's Gus here. Hi, Dan. Can I? So we're going down the route of probably going down the Intapp route. There's still a bit more to do. Can I say my one bugbear, which relates to Dan's just point around, accountancy language, is I want to demo this to a broader team. I would not demo. Every demo I goes through this project screen. It looks nothing like anyone in my firm does. 99% of what we do is audit accounts and stuff, and it's an immediate turn off for accountants. They're like, all right, I get the first bit, but they're going to go into this, and that's nothing like what I do. And it's just really a terminology and a bit of other stuff that if you guys can put together a demo that goes to an actual, an audit setup or something like that, it's just going to land so much better.
Let me swap to my audit demo and I'll quickly finish the rest of the demo using that. I have many demos. That was my consultancy flavor one. Here I am within my audit 2024 team. And so if you go to Planner then, so it might be perform your audit checklist, do your risk assessment, access your organizational structure. So it's very flexible. And this is the audit flavor of my demo. So
does that look more like what you would want to see?
Yeah, it certainly do. I think it's just if you show something that has a bunch of terminology that no accountant has any relation to, they're immediate like, this is just another demo of something that's not going to be any use to you, if that makes sense. So this is certainly better. Audit and accounts is what we spend 90% of our time doing. So anything that's more tailored to demoing processes that people can relate to a bit easier, it's just going to be easier for them to go, oh, wow, this is really exciting.
Yep, I absolutely agree. And that's why sorry, I've clicked off it. It's why I've got different demos for legal, for consultancy, for accountancy, etc. So yes, my accountancy flavor of this. Something that we have noticed recently, we spent some time talking to our clients about what's really resonating for them within the solutions within Workspaces. And an odd one that we weren't expecting was their love of OneNote, but how we're doing it. They've all been using OneNote, some of them for years, but everybody has their own personal OneNote notebook, which is not easy to share. You accidentally end up sharing the entire notebook instead of just the part that you need for the engagement, etc. What we're doing here is that when this team for Audit 24, which is an accountancy engagement template, has been applied, has been spun up, we're then creating a OneNote notebook, which is shared and available to everybody working on that particular engagement. So it's OneNote notebooks that are automatically secured essentially with the team. And then last couple of things is that from a document management perspective, we can create the work breakdown structure, the folder structure automatically. We can create starting documentation. So if every engagement needs a certain set of documents, as soon as the team's spun up, we can create those documents automatically. You then gain the benefits of the modern work environment, being able to do this within Teams. I do recognize, however, that legal firms in particular, but also accountancy firms, prefer full-fat desktop Word because it's got a lot of plugins within it that they would use. So you can configure that it opens up in the full version. But here again, you've got co-authoring, you've got the modern commenting subsystem. And we can make all of this available from a document management perspective to those that work within Outlook. So here is, I'm back on the Alpha, the consultancy one again. I do have an audit flavor of this, so in my live demo, here we actually have that team that we were just in. This is the folder structure that we were just in the Files tab, but I'm able to access the Documents folder. I can see the documents that are actually being held in that underlying SharePoint, so I can view it from the team. I can view it from Outlook. I can create new documents from here. We've got version control document IDs. We've got automatic addition of metadata and content to the document based upon the engagement. So it's not only a Teams solution. I describe it as work from wherever you prefer to work. If you're a Teams user, you work in Teams. I'm an Outlook guy. I'll work in Outlook. Daniel wants to work from the desktop, so he can access this through desktop integration. Because it's all in SharePoint, I can be accessing it from my mobile phone as well.
We need to move on, Colin. Sorry.
I am done. That is the last slide in my demo. So perfect timing. Any questions, queries, further comments on any of that before I hand back to Daniel?
I think I only need 30 seconds for my bit. So it's really important to me. Like, does everyone understand where this would fit into their business, what problem it would solve? I appreciate sometimes the word SharePoint doesn't necessarily mean everything to everyone. Yeah, could I just get some feedback? Does this kind of, most people who I can see, I know that this makes sense to them because I know who you are. It's more the people that I can't see. Like, can I just get some feedback? Does this make sense? Do you understand where it fits in, etc., etc., etc.?
Yeah, for me, it's as a firm who's sort of starting to look at this and trying to make a decision. I think the sort of the difficult bit, or the bit we need to help visualize, is that there's so much configurability in it.
Yeah.
It's like, how do you help us through that process? Because the configurability of it, how do you set up your file structures?
Yeah, I'll come on to that.
What is the standardized?
I've got that on the slide momentarily. So yeah. What about some other people's feedback?
So can I just ask a question just around some things like the correspondence? How much of that can be automated versus having to file things in the right place?
So there's a concept called luggage tagging. So I'm sure you've worked with a law firm before where you see that code in the subject. I think you actually have it. I've seen it on emails from you, Chris. Don't you have that IT thing in the subject line?
Yeah,
you have it. Yeah. So it's exactly the same way as that. So there's a concept of what's called a luggage tag. It puts like a unique code on the email. And then when that email is going backwards and forwards, it will automatically file it in the place that the code relates to, in effect. And so when you're sending it, that gets appended on the subject. Can be a very useful feature, but when the client says thanks, can be a less useful feature. But yeah.
I was just going to ask, does it only save the latest version? Does it delete the old ones, or do you just keep everything?
Well, Linda, the idea of SharePoint is there is only one version of a document now. So like if I just share my screen very quickly, when you work in SharePoint, if you are true to kind of SharePoint in its truest sense. So this was the presentation we were working on today, and we only ever had this version of it. And if I click version history here, you can see all the way, there's some things before, but on this, there was the 21st of September, and then you can see all different changes here at these times. And then you can click open version here. I won't do it now, and it would take you into that version as like a temporary piece. So
Okay.
it's all, so you don't, there is only ever one version of a file with like hidden subversions in the menu. Does that make sense?
That makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah, we find that really helpful, like Colin was saying, because it just means that as long as you go back to that link, you're always in the right place. You're not having to go, oh, are we on version 4, 5, 6, 7, 22? You know, even for the call today when we were making changes, you know, I didn't have to say to Colin, oh, by the way, here's the latest version of the slide. If you have the link, you have the latest version of the slide.
And also it also improves security, because if you screw up and send the link to the wrong person, they won't have access to the document. So it's extremely more efficient and secure than just firing attachments around the place all the time.
Yeah, just one thing to answer an earlier question, and then I'll take a couple. We'll hang on at the end because I want to allow people to finish on time, and then we can take more questions at the end. So, I guess to go back to what Gus was asking, so where did TTEC and Intapp come in with this? So effectively, TTEC have now done nearly a dozen Intapp projects in accountancy. So we, I guess, have a playbook for three things. A, how do we migrate data out of your old system? So we've done migrations from CCH, from Virtual Cabinet, from shared drives, from iManage. So I know for most people that covers all the bases. So we know how to move out of those systems, and we have a migration tool that moves it in. Number two is we've built all the integration with the practice management systems. So I know already how to query CCH, Practice Engine, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so then that integration is already done. And then I think the third point is we have a stat, and don't ask me about Iris. We'll talk about that separately for those who are Iris users. It can be done as well, by the way. It's just Iris is difficult at best. But then the third point is also to answer Gus's question, we have a series of workshops that we run with you. And so we will come to you and say, our belief on best practice is this, and that's about a job concept of the world. So our viewpoint on best practices, the way you do this is you saw the folder structures, each one is a job, and every job has all the emails and documents filed to it, and a job lives under a client, and jobs are created from the practice management system. I haven't got time to get into that today, but we have a fairly robust now and well-tested approach of how we guide an accountancy firm through how do we migrate the data, how do we integrate with an accountancy practice management system, and how do we organize the system to optimize all of that. So we've got a lot of experience now of going through that with other clients. So yeah, that tends to help a lot.